Hello, Bill.
Good morning, Matt.
Welcome to the DMZ, everybody.
Another high wire act recording on Wednesday morning. I think last week, right when we finished, I saw that Pelosi had sent her letter to Trump that maybe the 29th's not going to work for us for the State of the Union, and we couldn't talk about that. So Wednesday's
right,
always...
Bill, you and I are like Tom Brady, man. All we do is win. That's okay. We still win. It doesn't matter. Timing doesn't affect us. The weather doesn't affect us. We just keep marching down the field, my man.
Well, the shutdown's still happening. The Mueller investigation is continuing to dominate. Giuliani is self-immolating in front of our eyes. But there's nothing more important than deciding if a group of high school teenagers are racist or not. We must solve this mystery.
Yes. Well, and somebody at the Atlantic, I forget who, wrote a good piece. Basically, it said a lot of things, but one of the things it said was, like, if there wasn't video, let's put aside the fact that the video that we saw the first 8 hours was selectively edited.
Did you watch all 8 hours? Did you watch every possible angle you could of all the video to make sure you knew exactly what happened?
I have not done a thorough deep dive like Robbie Suave, my former colleague at Reason, and others. But fair to say, what we saw was a snapshot and not indicative of the out of context. But having said that, somebody at the Atlantic made the point, which is like, let's assume the worst, right? Like, let's say that it actually did go down the way they said it went down. The only way that story works is as a video, right? So, like, if I had seen this happening, and let's assume the worst, right? That a Native American was beating a drum and this white kid stood there close to him smirking. That's not exactly Pulitzer Prize winning journalism for me to write that. It had to be the video. And so, again, I think that speaks to the point that you made, which is that all these things happening in the world, and we did obsess over something that even had it been true, as it was originally depicted, probably was not warranting the kind of attention that it got.
No, yeah, video is everything here. There's no question about that. And the mere fact that you can edit video and focus on certain segments and certain angles, and then write a piece characterizing things in your favorable way, should be a warning to everybody that it's very easy to confuse and throw sand in people's eyes and distract you from other matters. I mean, look, I only saw a little bit of stuff strictly because I knew I'd have to talk about it with you. Otherwise, I would just not even care.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I was like, someone's going to ask you about this. Matt's going to talk about it. Someone's going to say, it's like, I just better be moderately informed about what happened here. But even
this is a look behind our dysfunctional bromance.
Right. I'll add this little tidbit, Matt. When I was, I believe, a high school senior, I was on a chorus trip to D.C. I believe it was the same time as the March for Life. It was some anti-abortion protest. I think it was March for Life. And I was in the old post office pavilion, which is now the Trump Hotel. And I said a bunch
right
of
across the street from Michel Richard's Central, which is a restaurant where we have both dined, Bill.
Right.
We ate there one time.
I said a whole bunch of obnoxious things to the anti-abortion protesters. I won't share exactly what they were, but I was your standard, high school male, smug jerk, popping off.
Dare say privileged?
What?
Say privileged?
I don't know approach to do with that. I was a guy who felt like I had I knew everything and I could, mock others. So I feel like I sort of understood the mindset. And I wasn't even in a group. I wasn't with a group of guys being egged on. I was doing it by myself. But what I saw was a bunch of guys hopped up on their egos, first going after those few African American Hebraic people who were saying various hateful things, and then the Native American group comes in the middle of it, and the boys seemed just as sort of hopped up. They were just sort of being broy. And if you want to add racism into that, you're welcome to make that inference. But whether you do or not, they're just being kind of jackasses in general, and it just bled into one group to another. First the African Americans, and then the Native Americans. So trying to discern the exact nature of their adolescent obnoxiousness, I find very unimportant to, let's say it's
well, but it's important because it's important, right? So on the merits, this should not have been a story, but because it enraptured a nation for a week, it becomes our problem. We have to pay attention to this, and once you kind of accept that, which I'm saddened by that, but once you accept that premise that this is a big deal because it's a big deal, there are a lot of interesting subplots and trends to discuss, including there's going to come a time when we can fake videos, not just selectively edit them, but there could be a video of you doing something that you never did, and that looks realistic and compelling. And I don't know if we, number one, as consumers, just individually, as consumers of information, we know about when I say fake news here, I'm not talking about the mainstream media. I'm talking about Russia, with the ability to do misinformation. And it does look like this video may have been sparked by some attempts to engage other countries to engage in dividing us, right?
Well, let's be a little careful. There's a report that the first person that tweeted this out was someone from Brazil who had a fake bio claiming they were from California, and they weren't.
And that's the one that I think that's the Twitter feed that really made this go viral.
Right, and that Twitter account
read into that what you will.
That Twitter account got suspended, but just so we're being consistent here, you and I don't know the entirety of that backstory either. We know this person was from Brazil, misrepresented themselves on Twitter, account got suspended. That doesn't mean it was from Putin, We don't want to fill in too many blanks ourselves because we don't really know. But I think the point still stands that you should be careful because you always could be being manipulated by an outside force, and you don't know what their ulterior motive is.
But I think that's important for us as consumers of information, as individuals, to become to have filters and to become better, more skeptical. But I also think this is a problem for the mainstream media. Stories like this get thrust upon us. And I'll tell you personally, when I originally saw that video, I felt like I needed to, I don't want to say virtue signaling, but I felt like I needed to, at some point, condemn what I thought these kids were doing. And I even talked to my little kids. I had a talk with my little kids. Basically, don't you ever act like this.
Well, that's not a bad talk to have. I don't think you should feel bad you had that talk. I mean,
I had to go back and have the second talk with them about not being tricked by videos.
Whether you think the kids are racist or not, they weren't behaving in a great way. They weren't behaving in a respectful way. So you could still.
I think that's fair, but it's an awful lot to ask considering the context. To expect them to behave better than they did, given the context, is asking a lot.
Well, you can have a talk with your kids and say, if you're going to go out in the world and speak your mind, represent a viewpoint, do so in a respectful fashion. You can have that conversation regardless of what you think the ultimate truth is about this video.
Yeah, I have those all the time, and I think they're super important for parents to have. But I guess this is just a warning. We should probably take this as a teachable moment. I don't know if collectively as a society we're actually going to learn from this, but I think we should definitely make an effort to do so.
Well, I'm sure we won't learn from it, but in my mind, and look, I am not, maybe I'm not as pointed towards the teenagers as others are, but I'm not that charitable either. I don't think they were acting in a great way. I
have to admit something. I'm sorry to interrupt again, but I have to kind of admit something that we've talked about here before with Brett Kavanaugh. Remember, I wasn't a big fan of Brett Kavanaugh, and a lot of it. This is early on. This is before there were any sort of allegations against him. I just didn't really like him as the, rich Johnny Lawrence Cobra Kai bro. And it's interesting because, I grew up around a whole bunch of white people, and I didn't like a lot of them. A lot of them were jerks. So the kids who would pick on me or who I thought were the rich kids, they were like the Cobra Kai gang, right? I wasn't harassed by minorities. It was like white people who I found to be, the people who kind of rubbed me the wrong way. In my experience, probably because I was around a lot of white people, just statistically speaking, it was more likely that sort of the rich, privileged, smirking white guy. So even when I saw that video and they're wearing those red MAGA hats and that kid wearing that smirk on his face, even I, who went to the Right to Life, dinner the night before, I think that I had some sort of prejudice against these kids where it's a confirmation bias. And I saw other people copping to this same thing. Now, they were not willing to be persuaded. Well, these are people who, in some cases, people were calling for these kids to be punched in the face.
That's obviously not okay.
That's an issue we haven't gotten to yet. But I think there are people who didn't just sort of have a bias against them, but they allowed that bias to influence the things that they said and did on Twitter. And I think that we need to acknowledge that. If I had that sort of bias toward any other group of Americans, I would really feel like, man, I need to really check myself, because that's not cool to assume this about these people. But I think for some reason it's okay when they are these Covington high school kids.
Well, bias is dangerous regardless of what the group is, whether it's a privileged group or an oppressed group. Bias, there's always a danger that you're going to jump to the wrong conclusion. And you shouldn't fill in the blanks based on just your bias. Now, I think, from what I was saying before, the other longer videos shows they were acting in kind of a stereotypical obnoxious high school male way. So, and there was one other video going around, and quite frankly, I'm not even sure it was from the same group of kids because I can't tell from the one video. But there's one video going around where a kid's saying it's not rape if you enjoy it. If that is from the same group of kids, that isn't actually horrible thing to say. Some kid said it, whether it's from Covington or somebody else. Some kid said it. And that's not a good thing to say. So, I mean, there's evidence that they were being obnoxious, and if you people who were dancing and doing tomahawk chops and war whoops, there is a racist element to that. You're certainly being disrespectful to somebody in doing that. Having said all of that,
well, and this, I mean, I who knows the truth, but I mean, the story is they were attacked and called racial slurs by this black Hebrew.
Right, that happened before. Yes.
Group. Then the Native American protester marches in. They don't know if he is sort of taking their side, whose side he's on it initially. And then apparently they were doing, these are like school cheers or something. You know how like when a protester interrupts a rally, people in the rally will like break into a chant or something. That's the argument as to what they were up to there. Now, look, I'm willing to concede that they do come off as like these pompous, arrogant kids, which in fact, I mean, they're kids, right? Kids are going to, sometimes act immature. But that's totally different from they're racist. They need to be punched in the face.
Well, no one say they should be. I don't not say they should be punched in the face. And I'm really mad at myself that we're talking about this for this long. But I mean, I think the Robbie Soave story he wrote for reason. I mean, I think this is an example of how the writing of it can blur, or at least it's an eye holder question. The way he characterized it is kind of what you were doing, which is the small African American group were saying bigoted things to the white kids, and things are really tense. And the Native American group came in to break the tension, and that part of the story wasn't well understood. What I saw when I saw the broader video was a very small group of African Americans saying mean things, and let's be very clear: like this is by no means in any way representative of African Americans generally. It's just
this is like a
this is like a serious fringe. This is like 3-4 people. It's like a super duper fringe. Like I've seen folks like this. Black and brown groups saying obnoxious things in the New York street corners when I was a kid. These are total fringe folks.
And these guys hang out by like the portrait gallery or that area down the metro down there.
These are the kind of folks who they go to every event to like say obnoxious things, and they were a good distance from the high school kids, and the high school kids were mocking the whole scene. Like there was no tension. There's no chance there was going to be fisticuffs. They were mocking them as like, look at these crazy people from the big city. Let's make fun of them. Let's do goofy things and mock them. And then the Native American folks came in and they were kind of in the same mindset doing this. Let's make fun of these people too. There was no tension. There was no seriousness to the whole affair. But I just want to test one other point. The still of the guy smirking.
Yep.
And it's very possible the guy smirking because he wasn't jumping up and down. He wasn't doing tomahawk chops. He was doing, at least in that still. I didn't spot him in the whole video to see what else he might have been doing. It's very possible that he, as an individual, just got walked up to and was like, I don't know what to do here. This is kind of weird.
Yeah.
I'm going to
he's also got, I'm
going to stop you, Matt, because I'm going to make this freaking point.
Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
There was I think, an innate desire on the left to take that image and make it representative. This shows what Trump has done to us, that they have wearing the MAGA hat, they've infected these kids, they've encouraged racism to such a degree that they're going to come and stare in the eye of an elderly Native American Vietnam veteran and be obnoxious racist without a care in the world. And I want to make that point. And I completely agree that Trump has done horrible racist things as an individual and has warped and stoke the American fabric, stoke the worst elements of the American fabric because of that. I don't need to discern what was in these kids' minds to know that and to make that point. I don't need the still. I don't need the YouTube clip. I don't need the GIF. So to spend 20 minutes on this, as we unfortunately have, to talk about this, wastes all of our times. But to your, I think, bigger point, it shows how easy it is to get manipulated. Yes. Because we're spending so much time on this as a nation.
Yeah.
And it's not necessary to have a discussion about race in America. You don't need this example to have that discussion. Plenty of real stuff is going on to talk about that you don't need this.
Yeah. I'm going to resist the urge, because I could talk about this a lot more, and I'll resist the urge to do it, except the last thing I'll say is as I said earlier, I think it matters because it matters. If something dominates the news for multiple days and stokes a culture war, it doesn't matter if it's deserving of that or if it merits that. It is what it is. And this became a huge story. And I don't know if that image will be forgotten or will become iconic, but it certainly had a moment.
Let's shift gears to something, to anything else.
Okay. Well, I think the other big thing to talk about is the 2020 race for the Democratic nomination. That's been, I don't want to say quietly, but it's sort of like the subplot right now, right? It's
really early. I mean, it'd be crazy if it was the main story. I mean, it's January 2019, for Pete's sake. But we did have
days announces.
What's that?
It seems like every couple days there's another announcement.
Yeah, well, we had Kirsten Gillibrand last week. We had Kamala Harris on Monday. I believe just today, Pete Buttigieg, the mayor of South Bend, Indiana. So mayor of a relatively blue city in a red state, under 40, military veteran and openly gay. So he is, I think it's exploratory, but presumably he would follow through. You also had the Tulsi Gabbard apology. She made her sort of pre-announcement a week or so ago. Then she had her apology that all those hateful gay things I said, forget about that. Biden had a bit of a mea culpa on the crime bill in front of Al Sharpton's group on Monday. Bernie and Booker were down in South Carolina, but they haven't made their announcements yet. So there's a lot of activity going on. And on one hand, the people are starting to notice that there's a lot of I'm sorry going on. Politico had an I'm sorry story. Every day was going to apologize for something. Biden the crime bill, Bernie for sexual misconduct his last campaign, Tulsi for anti-gay stuff. Kamala, she isn't so much apologizing. She's gotten hit for being too conservative as a prosecutor, or not progressive enough as a prosecutor, and she hasn't really apologized for that. She's saying it's being mischaracterized. Kirsten Gillibrand saying, well, my positions when I was an upstate rural congresswoman, I didn't have a broad enough view of the world to reflect what proper views. Now my views have changed. So she's done that. So all that kind of self-flagellating is going on. But a poll came out yesterday with a whole bunch of trial heats, and everybody beats Trump. Everybody beats Trump by a significant amount. Biden being the most, Biden being a 12. Even Nancy Pelosi beats Donald Trump by 3 points. Chuck Schumer beats Trump by 5 points. So there's this sort of push-pull. Are Democrats shooting themselves in the foot? Are Democrats going through a process where only the purest of the pure can survive, which might mean they won't have picked the most electable? Or does it totally not matter? Because anyone's going to beat Trump, and perhaps Democrats should pick the purest of the pure because that person could actually win. And why there's not a time to trim your sails. So I'm not telling you what exactly my view is in all this and doing that sum up, but do you have a gut reaction to from someone on the outside? Not a Democrat, not a Trump lover.
Yeah.
So, it's sort of if only Democrats could pick somebody I could get behind, maybe I would vote for them. Do you have a feeling about how this whole process is going?
I mean, the only thing I would do is, Democrats, y'all can pick, y'all can pick who you want. But I would urge caution against the notion that like anybody's going to beat Trump, because things change, and once there is a nominee, that person's faults will be brought out, and you have to win the Electoral College. And there are some people who may not play well in Michigan and Wisconsin, and other people who may play really well in those areas. So I think I would, if I were Democrat, I would err on the side of playing it safe, of assuming that Trump is going to, we tend to elect presidents to 2 terms in the modern era, that I would err on the side of caution and nominating somebody that I thought could win, not just somebody that made me excited or feel good about it.
In looking at these rollouts, do you feel someone more than the others is thinking ahead, thinking about how to win in the general, and therefore is potentially well positioned to, if they got the nomination, to perform well in the general election? Or do you feel like, oh, there's also a big rush to the left, and I forget it. There's no way I can get involved with this party?
I mean, I can't. Well, I think the odds of me getting involved in this party or behind Democrats are pretty long. That's not to say that I'm going to be voting for Trump either, but I think the odds that Democrats would. I think it's pretty clear that they have decided not to try to get the Matt Lewises of the world to make up the difference, and maybe they shouldn't, right? Like it's probably not smart. But having said that, so I don't think it's so much anybody who's doing something strategic right now as much as it just is who they are. And I think some Democrats are better positioned than others just by virtue of identity and charisma. So like I think Joe Biden is somebody to watch. One of the things I like about Biden is that he is who he is. He's a known commodity, right? Like the public knows Joe Biden. If Biden commits a gaffe, it probably won't hurt him because people are like, well, that's just Joe being Joe. He can't say anything that he has. If people like him or they don't, right? Where I think some of these other candidates, like a Beto O'Rourke, who I was pretty bullish on, but I think Beto, he makes a misstep and it could hurt him.
Like are you loving the road trip?
I haven't been paying that much attention, but I thought it was the oversharing and the dental hygienist chair was not a good look. I also Bernie is someone to watch, although there's a sense maybe his time has passed. But like I talked about last week, Bill, my sort of dark horse candidate, the one, like if this is the betting markets and you're going to buy low and just take a shot, my outside choice is Tulsi Gabbard. She's the one that I think I know, mock me now. I said the same thing about Trump. And you're probably right. I'm saying this is the long shot that I'm going to bet on, buy low, sell high.
To win the nomination.
Well, I think she's going to win. Like whether or not, I don't know if she's going to win the nomination. I'm saying it's a long shot. Maybe she just overperforms. Maybe she gets tapped as the running mate. I don't know. But there's something about her that I think is different. And that I have a sense there's a chance that she could kind of catch fire.
Matt, okay, I feel we've been doing this almost 10 years. Literally almost 10 years.
Almost.
We got big anniversary plans coming up. Almost 10 years. And I feel like my role in this relationship is to give you a three-dimensional, nuanced understanding of the Democratic Party and the left. So you're not stuck with the caricature of it that you get from all your conservative pals.
Okay.
And if you think Tulsi Gabbard's going to get on the ticket, then I've completely failed in my decade-long project.
Oh, let me make my argument. My argument would be, number one, you're probably right. That's why I say a dark horse long shot. But number two, if you look at what happened to the Republicans and what Donald Trump did, it's that the smart people, the people like you who've been paying attention, were wrong, because there's something weird happening out there that the so-called experts don't see. That is informing my that is what is behind my Tulsi mania, is the notion that there's something that is surprising, that she could catch fire, and that there's like a realignment happening.
I do think that Tulsi should not be ignored. I think, in fact, I expect that she will have an impact on the primary. People will have to react to her. She is going to push a foreign policy argument that is not in the mainstream of the party, but has its appeal to folks who are pacifistic, although I wouldn't call her a pacifist. But she definitely is very negative about military intervention in general, although she can sound pretty hawkish when it comes to fighting Islamic terrorism. So that's why she's sort of a complicated, hard to peg figure. When she talks about things like Syria, for example, other folks say you were way too chummy with Assad there. She'll spin it around and say, what, you think we should have regime change in Syria? You think we should do another Iraq in Syria? So there's some on the left who are going to be attracted to that, no question. But I think she takes it much farther than even the average anti-war liberal takes it, combined with the fact she has this anti-gay past, even though she's repudiated it. And I'm not one to assume someone's conversion is insincere, but as I've pointed out to other folks on Twitter, it's not the same as Barack Obama being against gay marriage in 2008 and evolving by 2012. It's not the same as Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton being for the Defense of Marriage Act in the 90s and being for gay marriage later on. Most Democrats, like Clinton and Obama, were otherwise trying to advance gay rights and were trying to be politically careful and expedient about it. And you could say that was immoral, if that's your belief. It is still extremely different. It is in no way parallel to being straight up anti-gay, talking about homosexual extremists, to be for conversion therapy, to say civil unions and gay marriage are the same thing, we should reject both of them. There is nothing comparable to where Tulsi was, and not just as a teenager, but when she first ran for office at 21 as an adult. She's 21. She's an adult. She ran for office on an anti-gay rights platform. That is different than anything most mainstream Democrats did in the 90s and the 2000s. Now, that doesn't mean I can't take
Look
her
at Donald Trump was all over if you want to talk about conservative orthodoxy, now, I'm not, the bases may be different, the electorates are different, and the media are different. Like, there's no Fox News on the left, exactly. But Donald Trump was on the wrong side of pretty much every major part of conservative orthodoxy.
Well,
including
Trump
issues.
What Trump did was went all in on culture war. So people in the Republican base said, I don't care where you were before, you're in my foxhole now, and therefore what's past is past. And you're doing it in a way that is so much more all in than everybody else that I believe you will remain all in as president, and folks who made that bet were correct. Yeah. If Tulsi was going to do a bunch of other things that were really what the Democratic base wanted, perhaps they would look past people look past Bernie on guns. It's not quite the same. It's not, he wasn't rah-rah NRA, but people look past that certain votes he took because they like the rest of what he's doing. Tulsi continues to antagonize Democrats. Yes, she's for single payer. Yes, she endorsed Bernie. Yes, there's a faction who agree with her on foreign policy, but she's attacking Democrats for for her harsh questioning of a judicial nomination, saying they're being anti-Catholic. She is saying both sides. I think for me, if I'm saying something incorrect, I think she's claiming both sides aren't moving on the shutdown. So she's still trying to be this kind of bipartisan figure that criticizes mainstream Democrats for partisanship.
Yeah. That's probably what I like about her. But
that's not the way to get on the ticket.
Well, not normally, not traditionally, but she's authentic. I mean, so let's assume some assumptions. Is that a tautology? Let's begin with a couple of my assumptions. One of the assumptions is that the establishment, being establishment is bad, being a politician is bad, being anti-establishment is good. Let's start with the premise that authenticity is vital. So now Gillibrand's out. Let's start with the premise that the public is somewhat prone to charisma over resume, although she does have a claim at the resume. And I guess what I'm saying is I think you may be underestimating her, but it's hard for me to tell Bill Scher about the Democratic Party.
I think she's going to force a foreign policy discussion that's going to expose various fault lines in the party on that score. And there's a risk that even if she only represents a small faction of Democrats, that they believe in her foreign policy views so much that they don't come around to the eventual nominee, and that poses some general election problems. So that's why, I'm not saying, not predicting that, I'm saying that's a possible thing, and that's why she shouldn't be ignored. Even if she's only getting 5% in polls, that 5% might really matter. So you should take that seriously. But the combination of review points, past and present, are so convoluted. I mean, I think there's an underlying, for those who pay attention to this extent, there's an underlying, what's with you? Where do you, what is your deal? And there's more backstory that people don't fully have their arms around. Her father was a Republican turned Democrat who was a leader in social conservatism and anti-gay activism, had an anti-gay radio show, and even the question of her religion comes up. Is he involved in something that's sort of cultish, has been speculated? And I'm sure when she gets her 15 minutes, people are going to dig in more into all that background and see if there's any there. Yeah. But a lot of it sort of adds up to, I just don't get you. I don't get where you're coming from. I don't get why you're in this party and what your end goal is. And there's just too much for to be overcome to actually become accepted in the mainstream. Whereas Bernie has his weak spots, but people who are socialist in nature say, you are a socialist who's mainstream socialism, that's awesome, and whatever weak spots you have, I'm going to look past that because I get what your deal is, and I want to go where you want to go.
Who has the best in the Democratic field? And there are a lot of people who are like, the Ted Cruz of Democrats and the Mitt Romney of, but who has the ability to have people coalesce behind them, to get people who are passionate activists, who are disciples, locked in to the cause? I think Tulsi may be the one.
Am I just shouting to the wind here? Am I surrounded by bricks and you can't hear what I'm saying?
Do you hear the words coming out of my mouth? I'm willing to concede that I'm not I'm barely in touch with the Republican electorate. I mean, it's entirely possible that I do not have a good handle on the Democratic electorate, but there's something about Tulsi.
I mean, she's young and is a good speaker. In Matt Lewis,
that'll take you a long way.
She's likable, right?
The likability matters. She's got the generational argument.
But she's not going to own the generational argument, because you're going to have Joaquin Cash is a few years older. Pete Buttigieg is similar in age to Tulsi. She's not going to be the only I mean, Castro's a little over 40. Buttigieg and her are under 40. If Moulton runs, I also don't think would get very far if he did. I think he's around 40. So I don't think she's going to own that space. And I don't think millennials just vote for millennials. You play millennials voted for Bernie, you know. And even people who are under 60 will be able to say, look, I'm a younger, fresher face than a Biden or a Sanders or even a Warren.
I think the matchup matters more when you're looking to Trump, when you're looking at the general election.
So, but to your bigger question, is there someone out there who can coalesce? There isn't somebody who you could say today, I know that is the unifying figure. I mean, you couldn't even say about Obama in January 2007. He wasn't even considered all that top tier at that point because Hillary Clinton had such a early lead, and John Edwards was considered such a serious proposition. It took time for Obama to make the case that he could really unify. I mean, even African American voters didn't rally to his side at first. They wanted proof. They wanted to show me you actually can get to the end of the line, and then I'll get on board. But and so some people are going to look at the 2008 experience and say, yeah, this probably could be very messy, but look, Trump's a common enemy, and we're all going to ride around the flag at the end of the day, the way we did in 2008. I would not assume that. I mean, I'm not saying it's a guarantee that Democrats are in disarray, but they don't start in a unified place vis-a-vis the primary. People are already planting flags across the ideological spectrum, and planting their flags in terms of what they think is required to be a viable general election nominee. There's not consensus on that point. So Beto, who was talked about as
we'll get it right by the
obviously
time
the
it's
unifying
over.
figure, obviously Obama 2.0, look at how much money he raised. Look at how well he did in Texas. Clearly he's the guy. It's been pretty negative towards him. And some schmucky pundit said in November how the Beto bubble can burst. It's already bursting, and it's not even January. I mean, not say he can't still recover, but he's clearly not on a glide path.
He's in danger. Like I said, I think the benefit of Joe Biden is that it's all baked into the cake, right? If Joe Biden slips on a banana peel, that's just Joe being Joe. I think Beto had really crafted this image, and it's now looking like it was a facade, right? Sometimes people rise to the occasion and grasp whatever, and sometimes they don't, right? When the spotlight is on. Now, I don't think Beto is in Michael Avenatti territory just yet, but he needs to do a course correction. I think that's without a doubt.
I think I said on a previous show that what gave Warren problems last year was that she was seen as a consummate fighter against Wall Streeters, and then as the Pocahontas stuff began to dominate, and at first her initial attempts to bat it back were feeble, and then the DNA test was disastrous. And so all of a sudden she didn't look like a good fighter anymore. She didn't fit the image that she had built up for herself. Now, I think with her rollout, she's back on her game. She's back to seeming like a populist fighter again. And we're not talking about Pocahontas and DNA so much.
Yeah. And
she's doing better. Not to say she's totally solved her problems, but she's where she wants to be, relatively speaking. Beto, in the campaign of 2018, you only saw him as a charismatic leader with big crowds, or doing cool stuff with his team, being like a regular guy, eating fast food, air drumming to the Who, guy you want to have a beer with. And he wasn't being this meandering, solitary figure going to random places without warning and then writing a high school level essays about it. That wasn't the guy he was being. And so it's discordant.
Right. No, I think you're completely right. But the weird thing is that he is the one causing this, right?
Yes.
So, if he had just kind of gone dark, he would have been in better shape than trying to put out. The things that have made him look bad are things that he is proactively putting into the into the ether.
Well, I can't know exactly what's going on in his head and his team's head, but it's been talked a lot that he didn't have pollsters, didn't have consultants. He made his own calls and took his chances, and that made him fresh and authentic. And you can start believing your own hype a little bit too much. You say, oh, well, I guess whatever thought pops into my head, that's a good thought, and I'm going to do it. Let's go have a road trip and write some live journal essays. It turns out not to be the best thing to do. I mean, a presidential level campaign is a whole other kind of scale, and you can't do that seat of the pants. You have to have some deliberation and think through the image you are portraying, because it's at some point it sticks, and you can't undo
I think this goes back to, it kind of goes full circle with where we started about how we need to be better consumers of videos and technology. I think that just as we are sort of in the media and as individuals, we're grasping with how to be consumers of information, these candidates are grasping with how to be creators of content, which is now part of the job. And the problem is, everybody wants to be AOC, and they're not as young, they're not as cute, they're not as good at it as she is. If you're a 40-some-year-old dude, you probably don't need to be Instagramming like your dentist appointment. I don't know how old Elizabeth Warren is, but the whole thing in the kitchen with the beer, I just don't think it's not authentic. It doesn't work. But this is like I don't want to say the first generation, but they're trying to figure out how to be cool and be accessible and tap into this new technology. But it's dicey because you end up looking like the guy who's trying to be cool dad wearing like the skinny jeans, and like, can you pull you need someone to basically, like my wife, if I tried to leave the house wearing red cowboy boots, my wife would like laugh at me and tell me to go back and change, right? They need someone to say like, this doesn't look good.
Well, I think you're a little unfair to Warren. I don't think her Instagramming has been that bad. I think the entirety of her role has been very good. I think she's back to talking on her own terms, and I think talking in the kitchen or seeing her on the road with her husband and her dog. I don't think that stuff. It doesn't come across inauthentic to me. I think she is seeming more three-dimensional now than she was when Trump was calling her Pocahontas, and that's all you heard about her.
I think she maybe has adapted and figured it out a little bit more. I thought that, to me, the rollout with the beer seemed forced, but again, this is the thing. Barack Obama was incredibly talented, and you could go back and look at that 2004 speech he gave at the convention, and it's pretty obvious, but he wasn't Barack Obama exactly. Like he had some adapting and learning, and he had some mistakes he made along the way, and he got better. And these candidates, some of them are going to have to get better.
Oh, I agree with that, and I agree that the pressure to make content is strewn with pitfalls, and plenty of people don't do it well and won't do it well. But also, I think people should not assume just because AOC has built a big Twitter following and Instagram following that means everything she does should be emulated, and that is the standard to achieve. Now, this is a little, it's not the same as running a presidential campaign, but I mean, I point out in my piece about her Green New Deal campaign, which did not work, did not get the committee she wanted. It's not helping her build relationships among Democrats to actually get the committee assignment she wants and to pass the legislation that she wants. So, she was pushing back. She was asked on Colbert, how many Fs do you have to give? And she responds 0. She didn't say the F-bomb herself. So she's pushing back and saying these headlines saying I said this are not accurate. But to the extent she is talking about how she feels about her relation with fellow Democrats, she is behaving as if she doesn't care. She's in a video encouraging primary challenges that was cut just a few days ago. She is still critical of the party writ large, and so she has not gotten the assignment she's wanted. And even Medicare for all, there was a lot of hurraying and huzzahing that there's going to be Medicare for all hearings for the first time. But then there's an article in Politico this week with Democratic leadership people saying there's no way this bill is going to the floor. We're not going to make our members walk the plank on this for those who are not in deep blue districts who don't want to vote on that. So she has not, I mean, to the extent that she cares, and maybe she doesn't care, maybe that she doesn't want to make friends on the Hill and get bills passed because she wants to be able to say, these folks are blocking our agenda, you need to get rid of them. That may be the whole point, and therefore she's achieving her goal. But for those who want to build coalitions, and this is why I think it comes back to the presidential campaign. Yeah,
this is Ted Cruz.
You got to build a fan base to win a presidential campaign, but you also have to show in some way general election viability, and you can debate what that means. It doesn't have to mean show me that you're a blue dog. It can mean something else, but show me that you can build something that is, if not 50 state, at least 26 state, 200 electoral votes that goes beyond a narrow ideological constituency, and just having the fan base, just having the Twitter following isn't going to do that. So she is not, I think, her model is not easy to scale because it's designed to only build a narrow following ideologically.
Yeah, this sounds like a cop-out thing to say or a cliche, but I'm really going to be interested to see how the AOC story plays out over the course of time. Can she's playing this game, and will it pan out? I'm going to be very interested to see what's AOC like 5-10 years from now. I don't know.
Well, and what does pan out mean? So to some extent, when I talk about she's not getting the legislation she wants passed, people push back. Well, that's not her game. She has a longer game. She's trying to move over to the window. She's trying to change the terms of debate. Well, that's fine. But to take this away from her as a person, I was like, what tactics work? At the end of the day, if you don't pass legislation, what are you doing? So show me these tactics will get you to legislation at some point, and then I can recalibrate my view. I've yet to see that. Even Martin Luther King, who was very confrontational, and as people note every year around this time, wasn't all that beloved by the end of his life by a lot of white people. He still was strategic. He still kept a narrow focus on the Civil Rights Act, even when folks like John Lewis on his left wanted to broaden the discussion. He was one of the people saying, no, keep it to this. Let's get this bill passed and marshal energies towards that. And that helped get the bill through. And after that, when he widened his lens and got into Vietnam and poverty, he got less and less popular with whites, which is not to say that that looks well on the whites. We're talking what tactics work, what gets you to the finish line legislatively. I think the civil rights movement in the early 60s picked their spot well. And I haven't seen that so much with the current movement today. In fact, their point keeps changing. There's a shift from Medicare for all to Green New Deal and even Green New Deal is kind of let's add all these other things on the Green New Deal, maybe a federal job guarantee and things like that. So part of deciding where does AOC end up in 5 to 10 years depends on what is she trying to do. Does she want to keep her seats? Maybe she doesn't care if she gets primaried herself and becomes an activist on the outside after this. How she changes as a figure, she's 29, being in Congress might change her in some way. I don't know. But it depends a lot on what her own end game is.
Yeah. I agree. It's going to be fascinating to watch. I don't know. I don't think the Palin comparison is a bad one, except the fact that she has a seat and she's pretty much immune to being defeated.
I wouldn't assume that. I mean, I think it's possible that she can get primaried in her district. Mm-hmm. It's possible she can. I think it's possible Rashida Tlaib. Tlaib, I think, is even in a more dangerous place than Cortez. Tlaib actually did not win by a lot of votes in Detroit 13. That's the John Conyers seat. And I don't want to pretend I understand the demographics of the seat of the district all that well. I do know that the person she beat, I believe it was Barbara Jones, if I remember correctly. Jones actually beat Tlaib in a concurrent special election that had fewer candidates in it. So technically speaking, Jones was the congressperson from like November to January, and then Tlaib was after that. I mean, just shows you that it was a fairly narrow primary for the Democrats. And Barbara Jones is African American. So is it possible that an African American candidate can say, this Tlaib person, she is not really representing us here. She is going off on these ideological benders, and she's not taking care of business at home. Does somebody run like that and give her a run for her money in 2 years? That strikes me as not implausible, considering how close her race was this time round.
The other thing is AOC has the media on her side, unlike Palin. By and large, the media, I think, is liberally slanted, and they're New York centric as well. But if Palin had been let's say after 2008, Sarah Palin got elected to Congress from Texas, and she was in the House, but she had the spotlight, the social media following, the excitement. What would she have done? How would that have played out? I don't know. I suspect it would be kind of similar.
Well, sometimes people get excited that their congressperson is a celebrity, and they feel proud of that fact. And sometimes people feel like, hey, you're running around across the country. You're not taking care of business here. I know people in Vermont who are upset with Bernie. They feel like he's no longer their senator anymore. He's always doing something else. Or maybe he doesn't care.
She represents Brooklyn and Queens. They probably want somebody. They're used to like the New York celebrity thing, I would assume. They're more. How
many New York congresspeople can you name?
Jack Kemp.
Upstate. So, I mean, New York politicians tend to do a pretty good job taking care of New Yorkers. I see Ocasio-Cortez. She talks about she's running against the Amazon headquarters being in her district. She's certainly involved with New York State politics and putting pressure on Cuomo and things like that. So I don't think she is unaware that she needs to take care of business at home, but we'll see if someone props up and says, you know what, this was an interesting experiment, but she's not the kind of local congressperson the district needs. We'll see.
Yeah.
Before we go, I know you want to talk Oscars.
Oh, no, I would just write. So I saw a lot of, not all, but a lot of the nominees, and I'm hoping to see more of them. I like Green Book a lot. I'd recommend that. There's some controversy. Dr. Shirley's family, I guess, is disputing some of the depiction. I like that movie a lot. The Favorite is my wife's favorite movie of 2018. So I would recommend that. I have to go through a list. There's one, Melissa McCarthy. Do you know about this one? Will You Ever Forgive Me, I think is what it's called. She plays Lee Israel.
For the Happy Land Murders?
I think she's nominated. I don't think it's for Best Picture, but I think she may be nominated for Best Actress or something. Yeah. But that's worth seeing. There's some good stuff out there. I did not see Mary Poppins yet, but
that's the one nominated film that I have seen with my children, which they enjoyed.
We went to see we went to see the movie called Cold War this past weekend, which is black and white subtitles, but it's thought provoking.
I do want to see Black Klansman, and I've been a Spike Lee fan for a long time, although I haven't seen a lot of his more recent stuff because I don't see anything these days. But it would be fitting for someone who has not been nominated as director before to win. I'm curious about that. But so
I've heard it's I heard it's horrible, but who know? You never know, right?
You run in different circles than I do, so perhaps you're getting different kind of feedback.
It's possible.
It was striking, though, that you had no female directors nominated, and no female directed nominations for Best Picture, no female nominations for cinematographer. And I think even in the screenplay, there's like a couple who were co-writers. So there still seems to be. I mean, Oscars always ends up being a debate about how we are advancing as a society. I mean, Green Book is being criticized for being kind of a whitewash, for having being kind of a white savior film,
which I don't think is fair if you see the movie, because I don't think that's how it's depicted. I also saw If Beale Street Could Talk. I don't know if they're nominated. I assume that they probably are, but that's a very good movie too.
But you like the Melissa McCarthy film, which I think was female directed.
It's one of my favorite movies of the year.
So was that snub? Should that have been Best Picture, and should have gotten a female director, a Best Director nomination?
Should have definitely been nominated. I mean, look, Vice is nominated for Best Picture, and it's the Melissa McCarthy movie is a much better film.
Well, I was surprised with that because, I mean, like BlacKkKlansman, I feel I've read a lot of good reviews about BlacKkKlansman. Some criticism from the left that felt like the main character was more of a conservative figure in real life than it was depicted in the movie. But having said that, I felt that was a pretty well reviewed movie from what I've read. Whereas Vice, I feel like every review I read was terrible. I think everyone's Christian Bale's performance, but everything else about it I've heard criticism about. So I was surprised that got in there.
Me too. It's a horrible movie. But Christian Bale, it's so weird. Christian Bale's great. Amy Adams is good. The guy who played Bush, some people thought it was a cartoon. I thought he was good. And I even liked Steve Carell as Don Rumsfeld. So the acting is good, but it's a bad movie. And the other one that I think is overrated is A Star Is Born, which I saw, like, I guess it came out 6 months ago or something. And A Star Is Born is a movie in dire need of another couple rounds of editing. There's a lot of good potential there, and I think that the acting is good. Lady Gaga is very deserving, but the movie, it's like if you write a column and you're like, it could have benefited from a couple more rounds of editing. They needed to cut a lot out of that movie. There are Dave Chappelle is in the movie apropos of nothing. There's zero reason for him to be in. This guy's nominated. Who's the brother in that movie? He's from Roadhouse. Sam Elliott. Sam Elliott, fine job of acting. You don't even need that character. Completely superfluous. Just take that character out. Interestingly, Andrew Dice Clay, who plays Lady Gaga's dad, turns in a terrific performance. I don't think he got any nomination for that. Probably should have gotten supporting actor or something. That's me. That's what I'm doing. I'm also watching, I'm back to watching the playoffs now.
Your NFL boycott has ended.
Well, I do make an exception for rooting for Nick Foles and Tom Brady. And now that Nick Foles is out, I'm rooting for Tom Brady because like us, Bill, all he does is show up and kick ass.
Once again, you're siding with the dark side.
Being up in Massachusetts, I'm sure you're a big Pats fan.
I grew up a New Yorker, so I'm born and bred to hate all New England and Boston teams. And I have, obviously the kids in school, they're all Patriots fans. Patriot stuff comes up. A friend of mine throws a Super Bowl party every year, and last year I was explaining that I was rooting for the Eagles because the Patriots are cheaters. which is very sacrilegious to say around here. But my children are still at an age where they believe what I say, and so they have accepted the Patriots are cheaters, and they are offended by it. And we were having lunch at a sports bar 2 weeks ago, and when the game was on, and there were all these Patriots fans there, and my older was really angry that we see all these rude Patriots fans who are rooting for the cheaters. And I was like, we're in a Patriot sports bar, kids. You gotta be respectful. Let's not make a scene here.
Because if push comes to shove, you're the one who's gonna get like beat up,
right,
by some guy named Seabass or something.
I was actually in Boston this past weekend in a hotel, and I was trying to do some work in the lobby, and the game was on, and it was a handful of people, but just seeing Patriots fans happy makes me so angry.
Bill, I think you should be celebrating the exception, the team that. Here's the thing, they beat I think it was the Rams. Then the St. Louis Rams in 2001, that Super Bowl. And they've been on a 17-year run. I don't care about it's cheating or not. If you can have an organization, it could be a marriage. Hell, you and I are on a streak of a decade here, just doing what you're doing this week in and week out. If you can do anything at the level we play for 17 years, you're doing something right. And I think
maybe what you're doing right is cheating. Maybe it's because you're good cheaters and you didn't get caught most of the time.
Look, mistakes were made, Bill. But that's not to account for a 17-year.
So Barry Bonds is the greatest home run hitter of all time?
That's different.
What's different about it?
Because the kind of cheating the Patriots were accused of was Spygate and inflating a football.
So they were caught doing. That's what they were caught doing.
Okay.
You don't know what they didn't get caught doing.
Those are category errors compared to an individual statistic with a player who's on steroids. That's a team sport where a
still gonna hit the ball. Still can't swing and miss.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I celebrate their whole catalog. I think anytime you can have something. And the fact that Brady and Belichick stay together, just like us. It's a buddy cop movie.
Who cares what Putin did? The important thing is that Trump won. That's what matters, and he's fighting the good fight. So who cares what happened all around him?
So are you going to put some money down on L.A.?
No. There's no glory in that.
We should have a friendly wager. I mean, of course, that's illegal, but theoretically.
I don't want to have football is such a horrible sport. I mean, literally, it is killing people. It is giving scores of people fatal brain injuries, and I want nothing to do with the game whatsoever.
Well, as you know, I've quit watching regular season games, and I have discovered, though, that what was depressing me and the thing that I hated about football was mainly being a Redskins fan. So since I quit watching the Redskins, I dip in now in the playoffs.
So you're a bona fide Patriots fan then?
No, I'm a Tom Brady fan because he's old. I just feel like I never liked Tom Brady till he hit 40. But at some point,
if you like the quarterback, you like the team. I don't care for the offensive line, but the quarterback, he's good.
Well, I like Belichick too. Like, not personally, I'm sure.
You like the quarterback and the coach. You like the team. You're a Patriots fan. Accept it.
Well, I can't. I'm not ready to go there, Bill. I'm not ready to go there. But for the next 2 weeks, we're all Patriots fans.
I mean, I like the tax cuts. I like the judges. And I like all the stances he takes. I don't really care for Trump as a person.
Well, as you know, Tom Brady and was it Robert Kraft, the owner,
right,
are fans with Trump. So maybe this does go.
You're all in. You have abandoned all pretense of never Trump. You're a Patriot, Putin, Trumper loyalist.
I guess that's where we're at with a smirk on my face. I don't. I'm rooting for Tom Brady. Yeah, I'm rooting for Tom Brady, and I'm rooting for the Green Book. So that's where I am.
You planted your flag, sir.
Yes. Well, this was a horrible episode. And Tulsi Gabbard, I should say.
Right. You've ruined your career in many respects today.
Let's just make sure that this doesn't see the light of day. We've done this for 10 years. You could do this for me. This episode never gets made.
Till next week. You can absolve yourself from your sins next week.
It's gonna be. I have a lot of work to do, my man.
All right.
See ya.
Take care.